Hello, welcome to Slick Willy Fly, and today what we're gonna do is this cool little saltwater inshore fly. Don't actually have a name for this yet. Nice rum and coke. So what's special about this particular fly is that I'm using a new material, Fin Racoon, and I have it in chartreuse with an olive, and here's a 2.0 size. Pretty similar fly. I used a little bit two-tone brush, but basically we're gonna make another one of very similar to this one. Get these out of the way. Let's talk materials. So the first material that I'm gonna introduce is something that's kind of new for me. This is Fin Racoon, and I'm in Sweden, and I found this a little interesting because I didn't know what Fin Racoon was. This is the brand that I'm using. It's made by Arctic, and it's supposed to be a Finnish, from Finland, raccoon fur. So I did a little homework because we don't have raccoons in Sweden, and I don't think that this animal is exactly what we in South Florida think of when we say raccoons. I think it's in more the fox family, and I loosely translated it. I don't speak Swedish, so it's not so easy for me, but it's a raccoon dog. I seen pictures. It looks like a fox, but it has the striping in the face similar to a raccoon, and they call it a Fin Racoon. Either way, regardless, I've been a lot of friends have been talking about this material. Not the easiest material to get, but I got my hand on two. This is a natural tan, and this is what they call olive in this manufacturer. And it is, I guess, an olive. It's like between a green and an olive. And for this fly, we're going to use the tan. I'm going to use some sparkle brush, EP brush. I'm going to use a little bit of this copper crystal flash. I'm going to use some brass painted 2-pupil orange, white with black pupil Dumbell Eyes in brass. You know, I was torn. I have these sparkle eyes from MFC, and I really like these. But we're going to go with a painted orange. I'm going to use some silly leg in this bright orange and pink, fluorescent pink. And it's a Mustad 34007 size 2 hook. And for thread, it's 140 denier ultra. So I say we change the camera angle, have another sip of my cocktail, and we tie the fly. Okay, so let's get started. It's Friday night. It's raining. It's gonna rain all weekend, so I'm probably gonna make a few videos this weekend. Load up the YouTube channel. I'm just gonna make a little base here and get my Dumbell Eyes going. You know, I don't know how everyone thinks about Dumbell Eyes. My philosophy with the Dumbell Eyes, when we talk about placing, is I want to make sure that I place them far enough back so that I have room to make a head. I want them far enough back that I could tie in. You see here, there's a weed guard, and I have room to use a little UV resin and make a head. And I think that that's kind of my goal. So a lot of times, if I just put the Dumbell Eye on the hook itself sideways and start it, that's a naturally occurring pretty good spot. It usually gives me enough room to make a head. So I give it a couple of wraps in each direction, check my placement, and I give it, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 more each direction, making sure that I like the way it's sitting. And if I like the way it's sitting, which I do, and I give it these figure eights that crank it nice and tight. And now I'm going to give it just a touch of super glue. Just like that, just because I want it to stay there. And now we're going to get into the Fin Racoon. So for the Fin Racoon, I'm gonna just get a little clump. I don't know. This material for me appears long. I don't know if this is long or not. This is my first ever time using this material. But I'm told by my friends that use this material, that fish with this material, they're not professional fly tyers or anything like that. I'm told that this material fouls much less than like craft fur, for example. Something about this material that it just doesn't want to foul. And that, I think, is a huge plus. So I just took a clump. I've realized that it's a bad idea to take out the underbrush. You end up with nothing. So I'm just going to leave all the little shorts in. I'm going to bring my thread all the way to the back of the hook, the bend of the hook. And now, like every fly that I tie, I'm going to trim the length. I don't want a super long tail. So I'm going to go ahead and trim that. I'm going to put it on the hook. And I'm going to give this a couple of loose wraps. Just making sure that I like where it's sitting, which I do. It looks good. Making sure it's distributed around the hook, which it feels like it is. And now I can lock all this down. Perfect. Now I'm going to get one strand of that copper crystal flash that I showed you. I'm going to fold it in half. One strand, I'm going to fold it. And then I'm going to go ahead and take it to the thread. Splitting it about as evenly as I can. Actually, I'm not going to take it to the thread. We don't need to do that. I can just present it on my side of the hook. About the length that I want. And I can actually lock that in. And take it to the opposite side and lock it in. And now I can open this, and I'm not going to really worry about trimming anything because we have plenty of time to trim once I've applied everything. Okay, so now I'm going to take a piece of EP, sparkle brush. I think this is enough for this fly. And I'm going to go ahead and tie it in on my side of the hook. Now I'm going to take a silly leg and I'm going to tie it in also. I've moved the thread up. My thread isn't all the way to the back. I've gone ahead and I've moved the thread about a third of the way in the remaining space. And I think that's where I want this leg to come out. Now some people will do this 60-40. Some people, you know, I don't worry about that. I try to put it pretty evenly on my side of the hook here. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these two legs forward, the one that naturally wants to go forward, and you'll see in a second what I'm doing. Actually, I'll do that in a second. I'm going to go ahead and put the other side on. Okay, so now essentially what I'm going to end up with is 4 legs that will make this look very crustacean. I'm going to take the one that naturally wants to go forward from each side. I'm going to go ahead and put one leg forward from each side. Just like that. Gotta get my thread up there first. And all we're gonna do now is go ahead and just secure it there so it's out of the way. And we let that thread hang. So now I'm gonna take this EP brush and I wanna stroke everything back. I wanna make sure my rubber leg is out of the way. I'm gonna give it a turn with the legs behind the brush, stroking everything back as best as we can. Now I'm going to bring the leg forward. Sorry if my arm gets in the way, but I pulled the leg behind the EP brush now. I'm going to do the same on the opposite side. So now I have the first two legs are in the placement that I want them. I'm going to continue wrapping with a brush, continue bringing as much as I can all these fibers back. I really don't want to wrap on top of itself. These fibers actually are going to give plenty of volume to this fly. So I'm going to do one more wrap. And now I'm going to go ahead and release the other two legs. Let them lie where they're supposed to lie. Pull it forward. Bring the EP brush under. Pull the other leg forward, capturing that right where I want it. Beautiful. And now I just continue wrapping till I have the desired thickness of the body that I'm looking for. Maybe I give it one more wrap. Now I capture this with my thread. And once I've captured it, I can bring my wire cutters, because this is wire, and I'm going to cut it close. I'm going to make sure that I push that little tag end down, get a few wraps on that. I'm going to trim some of these fibers that are going the wrong way carefully so not to cut my thread. I don't want any of these fibers going forward. It's just kind of a pet peeve of mine. It probably doesn't make any difference. I just don't think it looks as nice. Wrap a few wraps in the front. Now it's weed guard time. So for a weed guard, I have this 16-pound hard mono. I'm just gonna trim a little tiny piece off. Again, I'm gonna use my wire cutters because this stuff is so hard. I just don't want to ruin my scissors. And then I have this tool that's flat. Got it at an electrical supply house. I'm gonna go ahead and put a flat spot. I'm gonna crimp this hard mono best I can. And then I'm going to also fold it over as best I can. Just like that. And what it gives me is a nice flat spot that I can set on the hook and capture this weed guard. Just perfectly. Just like that. Comes out perfect every time. And the reason I don't worry about this ever slipping because I use UV resin. Well, I'll tell you what, this is a great fly. This fly is going to catch a lot of fish, I have no doubt. And you can get really creative. You could take a sharper to that fin raccoon tail. You can, take a Sharpie and mark it up and just make it look a little bit more crustacean. There's so much you can do. So whip finish now. Not going to really bother doing a second whip finish because I'm going to put UV resin on. Yes, I do hate all these little fuzzies though when I use UV resin. Alright, before I do UV resin, I am going to trim. Okay, everyone knows that when you use these kind of dumbbell eyes, this fly will swim, hook up. So for me to make this fly swim the way I want it to swim, hook side up, and swim well, it requires a little bit of trimming. And what I'm going to trim is this little extra fluff on the bottom. So I'm just going to take my fingers here, and hopefully I'm not left the frame of the camera, and I'm just going to spread out this sparkle brush. You know, you could take a needle and make sure it's all spread out nicely. And then once I have it pretty much spread out, I'm going to take a scissor and I'm going to trim down the back, the bottom side of this fly. And I'm going to be very careful to not trim any legs or any crystal flash. But this fly is going to be great. This fly is going to push water. This fly is going to, it's just going to get a lot of bites. It's going to be a great fly. Give this a little bit more shape. I like to do all this kind of trimming before I do the UV resin, not after. And of course, like all my flies, once I do the UV resin, this fly will sit in my windowsill all day tomorrow and get a good cure. Even though I'm going to cure it now with a lamp, we're going to give it a little better cure. Gotta trim that weed guard. It's too long right now. We'll do it right now actually. So I don't really want the weed guard to be much longer than the point. I want it to be around even with the point of the fly, just like that. Perfect. Beautiful. So now I'm going to get my UV resin. And another sip of my cocktail. I gotta think of a good name for this fly. I think I really need to use the name raccoon in this somewhere. When we come up with a name, you'll see it on the thumbnail. But this is basically a variant of the critter fly that I always tie. That catches a ton of fish. Fresh and saltwater, actually. You know, you just have to think about the size of the hook, the colors, and the type of hook. You know, you don't want to use a saltwater hook in fresh water. If you break off a fish, that hook's going to stay in that fish's mouth for a long time. So, you know, think about the hook. We need to fish ethically. Man, that looks sharp. I love it. That looks great. This fly is obviously gonna fish well, and I'm gonna send this. I'll forward these actually. I'm gonna send them to the Florida Panhandle and to Slidell, Louisiana. I have one of my absolute oldest and best friends is living in the Florida Panhandle. Moved from Miami up to the Panhandle. He catches awesome redfish up there. And his son, who recently graduated with a mechanical engineering degree, has an awesome job, and he's living in Slidell. So I love sending them flies. So there it is. Love it. I think this came out awesome. It will swim, if I can get that in there. There. So this is going to swim just like that. The rubber legs are going to want to float. This fin raccoon, I am told, has just awesome action. I'm going to make another one, and I'm going to give it some barring. I bet you it's going to really look awesome. And yeah, it's a great fly. Hey, welcome back. So yeah, I'm super thrilled with the way this fly turned out. Don't forget to look up Slick Willy on Instagram. Slick Willy Fly is now on Instagram. Might give this a little bit more trim work. Probably not. I love it. Love the way this turned out. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And good luck catching. Thank you for watching, and see you on the next video with a rum and coke.